Have you ever witnessed a family deliberately erase their own daughter from the most important event of the year? That night, I stood in the opulent ballroom of the St. Regis, watching 150 aristocratic guests take their seats for my sister's $2 million wedding rehearsal dinner. Everyone had gold-plated place cards with hand-engraved names. Everyone except me. My sister Victoria, draped in a $50,000 Vera Wang gown, smiled from the head table. "Oh, darling, we only reserved seats for important guests." The entire room tittered with laughter. My father waved his hand dismissively. "Don't make a scene, Hannah." "Hello, I'm Hannah, 32 years old, and this is the story of how I turned my sister's dream wedding into the worst nightmare of her life, completely legally and without lifting a finger. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. 15 years ago, my life changed forever. My parents died in a car accident when I was 17, leaving me with nothing but a suitcase and a scholarship to finish high school. The Reynolds family, old money aristocrats from San Francisco, took me in as their ward. Not out of kindness, but because Margaret Reynolds needed a charity case to polish her philanthropist image for the country club circuit. From day one, they made sure I knew my place. "Remember, everything you have is because of our generosity," Margaret would remind me daily, usually while I was organizing Victoria's closet or typing her college essays. Even after I graduated summa cum laude from Berkeley and earned my MBA from Wharton, achievements Victoria couldn't dream of with her purchased degree from a third-tier school, I remained the grateful orphan in their narrative. I worked 80 hours a week at Reynolds Holdings, building a portfolio worth $500 million through strategic acquisitions and mergers. But at family dinners, Richard would introduce me as Hannah, whom we've been kind enough to support. Meanwhile, Victoria, who spent her days at charity lunches and spa appointments, was hailed as the future of Reynolds Holdings. The irony wasn't lost on me. Every major deal that made headlines with Victoria's name attached, I had negotiated it in conference rooms while she was getting her nails done. Every brilliant strategic move attributed to her vision came from my analysis reports that she'd never even read. But I stayed silent, played my role, and documented everything. Because orphans who've lost everything once learn to build their security in shadows, where no one thinks to look. The pattern was always the same. I'd spend weeks analyzing market trends, identifying targets, and structuring deals. Then Victoria would waltz into my office 5 minutes before board meetings. "Sister dear, just email me your presentation. I'll handle the delivery. You know how you freeze up in front of important people." She'd say it with such false concern that anyone listening would think she was doing me a favor. 3 major acquisitions defined Reynolds Holdings' explosive growth: the Bayside Medical Group merger, the Pacific Tech Innovation deal, and the Horizon Pharmaceutical acquisition. Combined value, $300 million. My email records showed every detail. My negotiations with CEOs at 2 a.m., my financial models that predicted returns within 0.3% accuracy, my relationship building that got us exclusive first looks. Victoria's contribution? Forwarding my work to the board with her signature and adding, "Please find attached my analysis and recommendations." The Bayside deal alone should have earned me a partnership. I'd identified an undervalued medical group, structured a complex equity swap that avoided dilution, and personally convinced their skeptical founder to trust Reynolds Holdings. The morning after we closed, the San Francisco Business Journal ran a front-page story. Victoria Reynolds, the 28-year-old genius behind Reynolds Holdings' medical empire. Richard kept the framed article in his office. "Victoria has such natural business instincts," he'd tell visitors, while I stood in the corner taking notes like a secretary. "We're grooming her to take over everything." The truth was eating me alive. But what could I do? Challenge the people who housed and fed me? Risk losing the only family, however toxic, I had left? So I swallowed my pride and kept building their empire, one stolen achievement at a time. The question wasn't if I'd reach my breaking point, but when. 3 days before the rehearsal dinner, everything shifted. Marcus Kim, CEO of Apex Ventures and one of Silicon Valley's most respected power brokers, called me directly. Not through Reynolds Holdings, but on my personal cell. Hannah, I've watched you for 5 years. That Bayside deal? I know who really structured it. My forensic accountants traced the digital footprints. His voice was calm but urgent. I'm offering you managing partner at Apex. 2 million base salary, 30% carry on $1 billion fund. You'll run your own portfolio, your own team, your own destiny. The number made my hands shake. It was 10 times what Reynolds Holdings paid me. But Marcus wasn't finished. There's a deadline. I need your answer 72 hours after Victoria's wedding. And Hannah, you need to exit Reynolds Holdings cleanly. No lawsuits, no drama, no bridges burned. My LPs won't touch controversy. That same afternoon, I overheard Victoria on a conference call from the room next door. She didn't know the walls were thin. Once the MedTech Innovation acquisition closes, I'm restructuring everything. First order of business? Getting rid of dead weight. Hannah's been useful, but I can't have my foster sister hanging around when I'm CEO. Bad optics. MedTech Innovation, the $50 million medical startup I'd been researching for months. My proprietary analysis had identified it as undervalued by 70%. Victoria had been using my research, my financial models, my insider knowledge to position herself as the dealmaker. The acquisition would close the morning of her wedding, cementing her reputation as a business prodigy. I pulled up the contract she'd signed 48 hours earlier. Buried in Section 47, subsection 3, was something called Option 7. My pulse quickened as I read the fine print. Victoria had just made a $50 million mistake. The next morning, I arrived early to gather files from my office. Victoria's door was open, her voice carrying down the empty hallway as she spoke with James Morrison, the incoming CEO of MedTech Innovation. The announcement goes live at 9 a.m. on my wedding day. Perfect timing. Forbes, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, they'll all cover it. Victoria Reynolds closes historic deal on her wedding day. Can you imagine the headlines? She laughed, that distinctive trill that meant she was scheming. And your team is on board with the transition? James asked. My team? Please. The only person who knows the technical details is Hannah, and she won't be a problem much longer. I've already drafted her termination letter, effective immediately after the ceremony. Daddy will sign it during the reception. He'll be too drunk on champagne to read it carefully. I stood frozen in the hallway, phone recording everything. Isn't she family? James sounded uncomfortable. Foster sister, Victoria corrected sharply. We took her in out of charity. She served her purpose. Besides, I can't have someone who knows where all the bodies are buried working for competitors. The non-compete I'm adding to her termination is ironclad. She'll never work in finance again. My phone buzzed. An encrypted message from my lawyer, David Smith at Ernst & Young. Hannah, I've reviewed Option 7 in the MedTech contract. If triggered correctly, it's devastating. But you need documented proof of insider trading. Do you have it? I looked at my phone, still recording Victoria's confession, then at the USB drive in my hand containing 5 years of forwarded emails where she'd passed off my confidential research as her own. I have everything, I texted back. The St. Regis ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and gold accents. 150 guests in designer clothing mingled with champagne, each finding their assigned seats at tables dressed in white orchids and silk. I walked the perimeter twice. No place card with my name. Looking for something? Victoria appeared beside me, her voice honeyed with false concern. My seat. Where am I sitting? Oh, Hannah. She touched my arm with perfectly manicured fingers. Budget constraints, you understand. We had to prioritize actual important guests. I'm your sister. Foster sister. There's a difference. She smiled wider as Senator Whitmore and his wife approached. We're family by circumstance, not choice. Richard materialized at my shoulder. Hannah, don't make this difficult. If you're hungry, the kitchen staff has a break room. The room had gone quiet. 150 pairs of eyes watched the orphan learn her place. Among them, I spotted 3 executives from Apex Ventures at table 2, Marcus's people witnessing everything. Margaret floated over in Chanel. Dear, this is a sophisticated event. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable elsewhere. You're right, I said, my voice steady as granite. I would be more comfortable elsewhere. Victoria's laugh tinkled across the ballroom. Finally, some self-awareness. If you'll excuse me, I need to freshen up. I pulled out my phone as I walked toward the exit, making sure Victoria saw. I have some calls to make. Don't bother coming to the wedding tomorrow, Victoria called after me. Security will have instructions. The ballroom erupted in laughter. I stopped at the door, turned back, and smiled. A real smile, for the first time in 15 years. I wouldn't miss it for the world. In the parking garage, I sat in my Tesla, hands steady as I dialed David Smith. 3 rings, then his crisp British accent. Hannah, I'm at the office with my team. Are you ready? Execute option 7, everything we discussed. You're certain? Once we file with the SEC, there's no going back. I thought of 15 years of being erased, minimized, used. Of the foster girl who'd learned to survive by being invisible. Of tomorrow's termination letter already drafted. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Sending the forensic audit now. 127 pages documenting insider trading, securities fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. The evidence is overwhelming. My laptop showed the email arriving, timestamps, financial records, Victoria's forged signatures on my work, and most damning, the trail showing she'd used my confidential medtech analysis to structure her purchase. An analysis that contained fabricated projections I'd planted 6 months ago as a test. She'd never bothered to verify the numbers. David, there's something else. I forwarded him the recording from this morning. She admitted to planned wrongful termination and anti-competitive practices. Brilliant. The FBI will be very interested. Hannah, do you understand what happens at 9 a.m. tomorrow? Yes. Victoria announces the medtech acquisition to 200 investors at the Grand Ballroom. The press will be there for her wedding day triumph story. And that's when we reveal you own 51% of medtech through offshore holdings. Every dollar she thinks she's spending is actually yours. I started the timer on my phone. 14 hours until Victoria's world imploded. David, make sure Ernst & Young's senior partners are there. I want this done by the book. Hannah, after tomorrow, you'll never be invisible again. Good. I'm done hiding in shadows. 5 years ago, I saved Marcus Kim's career. Apex Ventures was hemorrhaging value from a hostile takeover attempt. Marcus had 48 hours to find a white knight investor or lose everything. Victoria was supposed to handle it. Reynolds Holdings could have been that savior. Instead, she went to Cabo with friends. I worked 72 hours straight, structuring a deal that brought in 3 sovereign wealth funds as defensive investors. When Marcus asked how to thank me, I said, remember this moment. Someday, I might need a door opened that only you can open. He kept his word. 3 years ago, he introduced me to offshore fund managers in the Cayman Islands. Completely legal, completely invisible. Build your ark before the flood, Hannah, he advised, and never let them see you building it. Through 3 separate funds, Prometheus Capital, Phoenix Holdings, and Resurrection Investments, I began acquiring strategic positions in companies Reynolds Holdings would eventually target. My salary was nothing, but my consulting fees to these funds, paid for my analytical work, were substantial. Every dollar went back into acquisitions. 6 months ago, I identified MedTech Innovation. The founder, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, was brilliant but desperate for capital. I approached her through Prometheus Capital with an offer. I'd provide seed funding in exchange for 51% equity, but with a twist. The ownership would remain hidden behind layers of legal structures until I chose to reveal it. Why the secrecy, she'd asked. Because someone is going to try to steal this company using my own research. When they do, I want them to sign every document, make every public announcement, and commit completely, before they learn who really owns it. The share certificates were filed in 3 jurisdictions, notarized and unassailable. My name appeared nowhere, yet everything led back to me. Victoria's fatal mistake wasn't just arrogance, it was laziness. The medtech innovation contract she'd signed was 200 pages of dense legal text. She'd skimmed it, signed it, and celebrated with champagne, never reading Section 47, Subsection 3, Option 7. The clause was elegant in its simplicity. Any breach of fiduciary duty, including but not limited to the use of illegally obtained proprietary information, triggers immediate asset transfer to the majority shareholder. I had insisted Dr. Mitchell include it, knowing Victoria's pattern, and Victoria had walked right into it, using my stolen analysis that contained intentionally inflated projections for MedTech's cardiac device, projections that would never materialize because the device didn't exist. I'd invented it as a trap. The email trail was damning. Victoria had forwarded my confidential analysis to James Morrison with the subject line, "My research on MedTech, do not share." The metadata showed she'd never opened the original file I'd sent her, just forwarded it within 30 seconds of receiving it. She'd committed securities fraud by claiming work she'd never even read. But the masterpiece was the timestamp correlation. Every trade Victoria made in the days before the announcement matched exactly with when she'd accessed my files. The SEC's algorithm would flag it immediately as insider trading. She'd used material non-public information, my information, to position Reynolds Holdings stock for maximum gain from the announcement. David Smith had run the numbers. "Hannah, she's violated 7 different SEC regulations. The penalties alone will exceed $5 million. The criminal charges, she's looking at potential jail time." "I don't want her in jail," I replied. "I want her to live with the consequences every single day for the rest of her life." The morning of Victoria's wedding dawned perfect. Clear skies, gentle breeze, the San Francisco Bay sparkling like scattered diamonds. The St. Regis Grand Ballroom had been transformed overnight into a wonderland of white roses and gold accents. 200 chairs faced a stage where the signing ceremony would take place at exactly 9 Hunquak a.m. The guest list read like a Fortune 500 directory. Tech CEOs, venture capitalists, hedge fund managers, and most importantly, Senator Whitmore's entire political network, including 3 members of the Senate Banking Committee. The press section overflowed with reporters from the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Bloomberg, and TechCrunch. Victoria had personally invited them to cover her historic deal, the brilliant young woman closing a $50 million acquisition on her wedding day. "This will be the deal of the decade," she told Bloomberg yesterday, "a new model for female leadership in tech acquisitions." I stood in the lobby, watching the arrivals on the hotel's security monitors. David Smith and 3 senior partners from Ernst & Young entered at 8:45, their faces professionally neutral. They took seats in the 3rd row, briefcases at their feet. At 8:50, something unexpected. 5 FBI agents in dark suits entered quietly, spreading out across the ballroom's exits. They didn't block them, just positioned themselves strategically. The lead agent, Sarah Coleman, nodded at David Smith. My phone buzzed. "Marcus Kim. We're here. Table 2. The other Apex partners want to see this." 8:55 a.m. Victoria swept in through the side entrance in her wedding dress, a custom Vera Wang creation that cost more than most people's annual salaries. Her smile was radiant, her confidence absolute. She had no idea that Option 7 had been triggered at midnight, or that her entire world was about to collapse in front of everyone who mattered. Have you ever been in a situation where your family took credit for your hard work? Comment below and let me know. And if you want to see how Option 7 becomes the nuclear weapon that destroys a $50 million empire in less than 24 hours, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell right now so you don't miss the explosive climax. Victoria commanded the stage like she was born for it. The spotlight hit her wedding dress, creating an ethereal glow that made the photographer's cameras click in rapid succession. 200 of San Francisco's most powerful people applauded as she approached the microphone. Good morning, everyone. Before I marry the love of my life in 3 hours, I wanted to share something extraordinary with you. She paused for effect, her smile electric. Today, Reynolds Holdings completes the acquisition of MedTech Innovation, a $50 million deal that will revolutionize cardiac care in America. The applause was thunderous. Senator Whitmore beamed from the front row. Richard and Margaret stood beside the stage, their faces glowing with parental pride. This acquisition represents everything I believe in, Victoria continued, gesturing to the presentation screen behind her showing MedTech's logo. Female leadership, innovative thinking, and the courage to make bold moves. They said I was too young, too inexperienced. But here I am, about to enter the billion-dollar club before my 30th birthday. She clicked to the next slide. Financial projections I recognized as my own work, now branded with her signature. Our analysis shows 300% returns within 18 months. This cardiac device will save millions of lives. The audience was mesmerized. Forbes' reporter was typing furiously. The Wall Street Journal photographer moved closer for a better angle. This was Victoria's moment of absolute triumph, her coronation as Silicon Valley's newest power player. Now, let's make history. She picked up the gold-plated pen, holding it high. Who's ready to witness the deal of the decade? The crowd erupted. No one noticed David Smith rising from his seat or the FBI agents moving slightly closer to the exits. I remained in the back corner, invisible as always, for another 30 seconds. Victoria's pen was poised above the signature line when David Smith's voice cut through the celebration like a surgical blade. Ms. Reynolds, I need you to stop. The ballroom fell silent. David walked toward the stage with the measured pace of someone who had done this before, his Ernst & Young credentials visible on his lanyard. Two senior partners flanked him, carrying sealed folders marked Confidential, SEC Filing. I'm David Smith, Senior Forensic Auditor with Ernst & Young. We have an urgent matter requiring immediate disclosure to all parties present. Victoria's smile froze. This is highly inappropriate. Security? But the security guards were looking at the FBI agents, who had subtly moved to block any attempt at interference. Senator Whitmore stood up, his face darkening. What is the meaning of this? David reached the stage, his voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom. Ms. Reynolds, before you sign that document, you should know that as of midnight last night, Option 7 in your original purchase agreement has been triggered. Option 7? Victoria's voice cracked slightly. What are you talking about? Section 47, subsection 3 of the contract you signed 48 hours ago. The clause that transfers all assets to the majority shareholder in case of fiduciary breach. David opened his folder, pulling out a document with multiple official seals. We've been retained to inform you that you no longer have the authority to complete this transaction. The press section exploded with movement. Cameras swung toward the stage. Bloomberg's reporter was already live tweeting. Richard Reynolds pushed forward. This is ridiculous. My daughter owns this deal. No, Mr. Reynolds, David replied calmly. She doesn't. And in approximately 60 seconds, the actual owner will explain why. Victoria's face had gone white beneath her makeup. This is impossible. Who would dare? Ms. Reynolds, David interrupted, please remain where you are. The presentation screen behind Victoria flickered to life. David's team had connected their laptop, and suddenly, 127 pages of forensic analysis appeared in rapid succession: financial records, email timestamps, trading patterns, and at the center of it all, a name that made Victoria gasp. Hannah Reynolds, beneficial owner. This is a comprehensive SEC filing documenting securities fraud, insider trading, and breach of fiduciary duty, David announced, his voice echoing in the silent ballroom. Every trade Ms. Victoria Reynolds made in the past 6 months was based on stolen proprietary information. The evidence was methodical, devastating, email after email showing Victoria forwarding my analysis as her own. Bank records showing suspicious transfers timed with confidential information she'd accessed. And then, the smoking gun. her recorded confession from 3 days ago, her voice filling the ballroom. Hannah's been useful, but I can't have my foster sister hanging around when I'm CEO. Senator Whitmore was on his feet. This is entrapment. It's illegal. No, Senator. FBI agent Coleman stepped forward, badge visible. Everything here was obtained legally. We've been investigating Ms. Reynolds for 3 months based on SEC whistleblower complaints. This event just accelerated our timeline. The screen changed again. 3 offshore companies appeared: Prometheus Capital, Phoenix Holdings, Resurrection Investments. Arrows connected them to a single point. Beneficial owner, Hannah Reynolds, 51% of MedTech Innovation. Victoria stumbled backward. That's impossible. Hannah is nobody. She's just... Just what, Ms. Reynolds? David asked. Just the person who actually negotiated every deal you took credit for? Just the analyst whose work you've been stealing for 5 years? Just the majority owner of the company you thought you were buying? The crowd was in chaos. Phones were out, recording everything. The Wall Street Journal reporter was on a live call with her editor. This wasn't just a scandal, it was a public execution. Wow, can you believe how fast karma is moving? From Victoria standing at peak glory to FBI involvement in just 5 minutes. If you're enjoying this story, please like and share it with your friends. Comment karma if you believe in cosmic justice. And now, for the most shocking part. I walked through the main entrance, my heels clicking against marble in the sudden silence. Every head turned. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a black Tom Ford powersuit that cost more than Victoria's monthly allowance, the kind of understated elegance that whispered rather than screamed money. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. I walked past the Reynolds family table where Margaret sat frozen, past Senator Whitmore whose face had turned purple, past the press section where cameras tracked my every step. 3 executives from Apex Ventures stood as I passed, a sign of respect that wasn't lost on anyone. I climbed the stage stairs without hurrying. Victoria stood there in her $50,000 wedding dress, looking like a child who'd been caught stealing candy. For the first time in 15 years, we stood as equals. No, not equals. For the first time, I stood above her. Good morning, I said into the microphone, my voice steady and professional. I'm Hannah Reynolds, the majority shareholder of MedTech Innovation. The ballroom erupted. Cameras flashed like strobe lights. Richard Reynolds pushed toward the stage, but FBI agents stepped into his path. I waited for the chaos to settle, maintaining eye contact with Victoria. You, she whispered, the microphone catching it. You're nothing. You're nobody. You're just the charity case we took in. Yes, I replied calmly. I was the charity case. The foster child you reminded daily of her place. The workhorse whose achievements you stole. I turned to address the audience. But I'm also the person who owns 51% of MedTech Innovation through completely legal offshore holdings established 3 years ago. Every document Ms. Reynolds signed, every announcement she made, every dollar she thought she was spending, it's all mine. The PowerPoint presentation resumed, this time showing my complete ownership structure. David Smith narrated with clinical precision as 3 years of careful planning unfolded on screen. 6 months ago, Ms. Hannah Reynolds, through Prometheus Capital, provided seed funding to MedTech Innovation in exchange for 51% equity. Click. Share certificates from 3 jurisdictions appeared. The ownership was structured through Cayman Islands, Delaware, and Luxembourg entities, all completely legal, all properly filed. The next slide showed a familiar document, my analysis of MedTech that Victoria had stolen, but David zoomed in on a particular section, highlighting it in red. This cardiac device projection showing 300% returns? It doesn't exist. Ms. Hannah Reynolds invented it as a trap, knowing Victoria would steal the analysis without verification. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Victoria's legs buckled. You set me up? No, I said clearly. You stole proprietary information and committed securities fraud. I simply documented it. I clicked to the next slide. Email timestamps showing Victoria accessing my files, forwarding them within seconds, claiming credit in messages to investors. Every email, every file, every login, tracked and traced. You never even opened the documents you claim to author. The FBI agent stepped forward. Ms. Victoria Reynolds, we have questions regarding insider trading activities. You've made 17 trades based on material non-public information stolen from Ms. Hannah Reynolds. But the final blow was still coming. I clicked to the last slide. Option 7, triggered. The clause appeared in full, each word a nail in Victoria's coffin. Due to breach of fiduciary duty, all rights to MedTech innovation transfer immediately to the majority shareholder. The $50 million Reynolds Holdings wired yesterday? It's being returned with penalties for contract violation. Victoria's collapse was total and public. This is impossible! She grabbed the microphone, her voice shrill with desperation. She's nobody. She's just the foster kid. Daddy, tell them! Richard Reynolds tried to reach the stage, but his path was blocked. This is a family matter. Everyone out. Actually, Senator Whitmore's voice boomed across the ballroom. This is a federal matter. He stood slowly, his political instincts already calculating damage control. Ms. Reynolds, you told my son you were a successful CEO. You told me you built Reynolds Holdings' portfolio yourself. I did! These are all lies! Victoria spun toward me, her wedding dress tangling around her legs. You planned this! You ungrateful— Ms. Reynolds, FBI agent Coleman interrupted, stepping onto the stage. We need to see your phone and laptop immediately. The senator's son, Thomas Whitmore Jr., stood from his groomsmen table. His voice carried across the silent room. The wedding is off. He looked at Victoria with undisguised disgust. My family doesn't associate with criminals. Thomas, please! Victoria reached for him, but he stepped back. This is just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Thomas laughed bitterly. You committed federal crimes. You've been lying to everyone, including me. He turned to his father. We're leaving. The press was having a field day. Ms. Reynolds, how do you respond to allegations of securities fraud? Shouted the Forbes reporter. Is it true you've been stealing credit for 5 years? Victoria looked around wildly, searching for allies. Her bridesmaids had backed away. Her parents stood frozen. 200 of San Francisco's most powerful people watched her designer facade crumble in real time. She was radioactive now, and everyone knew it. Hannah, she whispered into the microphone, tears streaming down her face, ruining her $3,000 makeup. Please. The legal machinery moved with stunning efficiency. 2 SEC enforcement agents approached the stage with official documents. Victoria Reynolds, you're being served with a cease and desist order. All your financial accounts are frozen pending investigation. David Smith pulled up his tablet, reading from an official notice. As of 9:47 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, the Securities and Exchange Commission has initiated formal proceedings against Victoria Reynolds for violations of Section 10B of the Securities Exchange Act and Rule 10b-5. Richard Reynolds finally pushed through to the stage, his face purple with rage. This is corporate assassination. I'll sue everyone in this room. Mr. Reynolds, Agent Coleman said calmly, Reynolds Holdings stock has been suspended from trading on the NYSE. The company has lost 40% of its value in the past 15 minutes. Margaret Reynolds fainted. 2 guests caught her before she hit the floor. The press photographers didn't miss a shot. I pulled out my phone, showing a trading screen to the audience. I shorted Reynolds Holdings stock at 9 o'clock a.m. this morning. Completely legal when you're not using insider information. Just publicly available evidence of fraud. The profit counter showed $12 million and climbing. These funds will be donated to foster care organizations across California. You destroyed us, Richard screamed. After everything we did for you. No, I replied evenly. Victoria destroyed you when she chose to steal, lie, and commit fraud. I simply exposed the truth. The Wall Street Journal reporter raised her hand. Ms. Hannah Reynolds, what happens to MedTech innovation now? The company continues under my leadership. Dr. Mitchell and I have real innovations to bring to market, legitimate ones that will actually save lives. We don't need fake projections or stolen research. Victoria was led off stage by SEC agents, her wedding dress train dragging behind her like a fallen flag. Richard and Margaret Reynolds stood before me on the stage, their aristocratic composure shattered. The ballroom had quieted, 200 guests leaning in to witness the final confrontation. "How could you do this to family?" Margaret's voice trembled, her perfect society facade cracking. "What family?" I pulled out my phone, connecting it to the sound system. "Let me remind you what family means to you." My recording from the rehearsal dinner filled the ballroom. Margaret's cultured voice rang out. "Dear, this is a sophisticated event. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable elsewhere." Then Richard. "Hannah, don't make this difficult. If you're hungry, the kitchen staff has a break room." The crowd murmured. Several society matrons who knew Margaret looked appalled. The recording continued with Victoria's voice. "We're family by circumstance, not choice." "You taught me everything I know about family," I said, disconnecting the phone. "You taught me that family is transactional, that love has conditions, that worth is measured by bank accounts and bloodlines." I looked at them steadily. "So I learned to play by your rules, and I won." "We raised you," Richard sputtered. "Fed you, educated you. You used me. For 15 years, I was your unpaid servant, your tax write-off, your charity case to parade at galas." I gestured to the screen still showing MedTech's ownership structure. "But while you were teaching Victoria to take credit for my work, I was learning from the best. You showed me that in your world, only power matters. So I acquired it." Margaret found her voice. "We can work this out. You're still family—" "No." The word cut through her plea. "I was never family to you. And now, I never will be." "There's one more thing." I clicked to a new slide on the presentation screen. The Reynolds Holdings ownership structure appeared with a new name highlighted in gold. Hannah Reynolds, 30% shareholder. The ballroom exploded. Richard staggered backward. "That's impossible. Our shares aren't publicly traded." "They became available 90 seconds ago when the stock crashed 40%. I showed the Bloomberg terminal on my phone. Distressed asset funds controlled by Apex Ventures purchased every share that panicked board members dumped. Those shares were immediately transferred to me as part of my signing bonus." Marcus Kim stood from table 2, his voice carrying across the room. "As of this moment, Hannah Reynolds is the largest individual shareholder of Reynolds Holdings." "The board?" Richard gasped. "The board has already been notified," I continued. "An emergency shareholder meeting has been called for Monday morning. The agenda has one item: your removal as CEO." I looked at the 3 board members present in the audience. "I believe we have quorum for a preliminary vote?" One by one, 3 hands raised. The vote was unanimous. "You can't do this!" Margaret shrieked. "That company is our legacy." "Your legacy is built on my work, my strategies, my sleepless nights." I pulled out a folder David had handed me. "This is a forensic audit of Reynolds Holdings. Every major deal for the past 5 years shows the same pattern. My work, Victoria's signature, your approval. The board has seen it. The SEC has seen it. Your investors have seen it." Richard's phone buzzed incessantly. He looked at it with trembling hands. "The credit lines. The banks are calling everything in." "Yes," I said simply. "When you build an empire on lies, it only takes one truth to bring it down." Within minutes, the story went global. The Wall Street Journal's push notification hit phones across the ballroom. "Breaking. Foster daughter exposes billion-dollar fraud, takes control of Reynolds Holdings." Forbes followed immediately. "The most epic corporate revenge story of 2025. How Hannah Reynolds destroyed her adoptive family's empire in 24 hours." Bloomberg's headline was more clinical but equally damaging. "Reynolds Holdings loses $200 billion market cap after SEC fraud investigation. Founder's daughter arrested at own wedding." I stood on stage watching the metrics roll in on my phone. Victoria's name was trending #1 on Twitter with #FraudBride. Someone had already created a Wikipedia page. MedTech innovation scandal. My LinkedIn exploded. 50,000 new followers in 20 minutes, 10 CEO connection requests, and messages from every major venture fund in Silicon Valley. The reporters pressed forward. Ms. Reynolds, what made you decide to act now? They gave me no choice, I replied simply. Last night, they literally told me I wasn't important enough for a seat at the table. This morning, Victoria was going to fire me and destroy my career with an illegal non-compete. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. What happens to Victoria now? That's for the justice system to decide. The evidence speaks for itself. A notification popped up on my phone. A text from Dr. Mitchell. Watching the news. Our real cardiac device just got FDA approval. Perfect timing. I smiled, the first genuine smile in this entire ordeal. If you'll excuse me, I have a company to run. MedTech Innovation has actual life-saving technology to bring to market. No lies, no stolen research, just real innovation. As I walked off stage, the Forbes reporter called out, "One last question. Was it worth it?" I paused. Ask me when Victoria's sentence is announced. The justice system moved faster than anyone expected. Within 72 hours, Victoria Reynolds became a cautionary tale in every business school ethics class. The SEC's investigation revealed even more than I documented. She'd been falsifying credentials, paying for fake awards, and had even hired a ghostwriter for her thought leadership articles in business journals. The Financial Industry Regulatory Authority delivered their verdict in record time. Lifetime ban from the securities industry. She couldn't work as a janitor at a hedge fund, much less as an executive. The judge's words were scathing. Ms. Reynolds represents the worst kind of corporate fraud, stealing intellectual property from a family member while perpetrating securities violations. The personal consequences were equally devastating. Her $5 million personal fine wiped out her trust fund. The court ordered 200 hours of community service at a non-profit teaching financial literacy to foster youth. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Her Instagram, once filled with luxury vacations and designer goods, went dark after losing 90% of her followers in 48 hours. But the social destruction was perhaps the cruelest cut. Every society friend blocked her number. The country club revoked her family's membership. The charity boards she'd sat on, purely for social climbing, sent formal letters requesting her immediate resignation. Even her favorite restaurants suddenly had no reservations available, ever. Thomas Whitmore Jr. gave one interview to Vanity Fair. "I dodged a bullet. Imagine being married to someone capable of such deception." His father, Senator Whitmore, went further. "This kind of corporate malfeasance is exactly what my anti-fraud legislation aims to prevent." The girl who'd spent her life cultivating an image of perfection was now radioactive, from princess to pariah in 72 hours, with every second of her downfall captured in 4K resolution. 2 weeks later, Richard and Margaret requested a meeting through their lawyer. I agreed to see them once, in my office at Apex Ventures, my territory, my terms. They looked older, smaller, their aristocratic bearing replaced by desperation. Richard's hair had gone grayer. Margaret's hands shook as she clutched her purse. Not the Hermes she usually carried, but something modest. The banks had frozen most of their assets. "Hannah," Richard began, his voice lacking its usual authority, "we need to talk about the family company." Reynolds Holdings is not a family company anymore. It's a publicly traded corporation where I'm the largest shareholder. "We're still family," Margaret pleaded. "Whatever happened, we raised you. You housed me. There's a difference." I kept my voice level, professional. "For 15 years, you made sure I knew I wasn't really family. Now you want to claim me because I have something you need?" "We made mistakes," Richard admitted, the words clearly costing him. "But we can start over." "No." I stood, signaling the meeting's end. "You had 15 years to treat me as family. That window is permanently closed. My lawyers will handle any necessary communication about Reynolds Holdings." Margaret started crying. Please, we have nothing left. You have each other. You have your blood daughter. That should be enough, since you always told me blood is what makes a family. I pressed the intercom. Security, please escort Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds out. As security arrived, Richard made one last attempt. This isn't over. If you contact me again outside of proper legal channels, I'll file a restraining order. I returned to my desk, pulling up MedTech's quarterly projections. Goodbye. They left, and I never saw them again. 6 months later, I stood at the podium of the Moscone Center, addressing a crowd of 2,000 at TechCrunch Disrupt. As managing partner of Apex Ventures, I was announcing our newest initiative, a $100 million fund exclusively for female founders who'd been overlooked by traditional VCs. The Phoenix Fund, I said, the name drawing applause, will invest in women who've been told they're not important enough, not connected enough, not enough period. Because I know what it's like to be underestimated. Marcus Kim watched from the front row, proud of his protege. In 6 months, I'd grown Apex's portfolio from $1 billion to $2 billion through strategic acquisitions and my network of previously invisible talent, the assistants, analysts, and associates who actually did the work while others took credit. MedTech Innovation, renamed Phoenix Innovations, had just closed a Series B at a $5 billion valuation. Dr. Mitchell's real cardiac device was saving lives across 3 continents. We'd donated the technology to Doctors Without Borders, ensuring it reached beyond just wealthy patients. But my proudest moment came when I announced a $10 million donation to Foster Success, a nonprofit supporting aged-out foster youth with education and career placement. Every foster kid deserves a chance to build their own empire, I told the crowd. The Wall Street Journal ran a profile titled, The Phoenix Files, How Hannah Reynolds Rose from Foster Care to Forbes 30, Under 30. They'd wanted to focus on the revenge story, but I redirected them. Success is the best revenge, but boundaries are the best protection. I'm not defined by what they did to me, but by what I chose to build despite them. My phone buzzed with congratulations from CEOs, founders, and investors worldwide. Not one message from the Reynolds family, exactly as it should be. 1 year to the day after the wedding disaster, Phoenix Innovations went public. The IPO valued the company at $5 billion, making me worth just over $2 billion on paper. I rang the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange, wearing the same black Tom Ford suit I'd worn when I took the stage at Victoria's wedding. The contrast between the Reynolds family members couldn't be starker. Richard had retired in disgrace to a modest apartment in Marin County, his reputation forever tainted. Margaret moved to a small villa in Portugal, living off the remnants of her inheritance, too ashamed to show her face in San Francisco society. Victoria worked at a department store in Sacramento, the only job she could get with her criminal record and lifetime ban from finance. Someone had photographed her folding clothes in the stockroom, and the image went viral with the caption, "From Vera Wang to Walmart." I felt no satisfaction seeing it, just a sense of completion. The St. Regis called that week. They wanted to know if I'd be interested in purchasing their grand ballroom as a private event space. The same room where I'd been denied a seat was now being offered to me exclusively. I bought it and renamed it the Phoenix Room. The first event held there was a gala for foster success, raising $15 million for aged-out foster youth. I made sure every attendee had a hand-engraved place card at their seat. Everyone was important enough. During my speech that night, I said, "This room once represented everything I couldn't have. Now it represents everything I've built. Not through revenge, but through resilience. Not through stealing credit, but through creating value." The best response to being told you don't matter is proving that you do, on your own terms. Standing in my office overlooking San Francisco Bay, I often reflect on the lessons those 15 years taught me. The Reynolds family gave me an education they never intended, a master class in power, perception, and patience. Family isn't about blood or legal documents. It's about who shows up when you have nothing to offer. My real family now includes Marcus Kim, who saw my potential when I was invisible. Dr. Mitchell, who trusted me with her life's work, and David Smith, who helped me turn evidence into justice. Respect isn't something you beg for or earn through servitude. It's something you command through competence and boundaries. The moment you accept less than you deserve, you teach others to give you less than you're worth. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. The Reynolds showed me for 15 years that I was disposable to them. Victoria showed me she would destroy anyone for success. They were telling the truth about themselves. I just took too long to listen. But the most important lesson? Document everything, every email, every timestamp, every stolen idea. Not for revenge, but for protection. Evidence is the difference between being gaslit and being believed. It's the difference between he said, she said, and here's the proof. My company motto, displayed in gold letters in our lobby, reads, "Your worth isn't determined by their acceptance." Every young woman who walks through our doors, especially the ones who've been overlooked, underestimated, or used, sees that message first. Success built on someone else's work is a house of cards. Success built on your own foundation, even if it takes longer, stands forever. The Reynolds empire fell in 24 hours. Phoenix innovations will outlive us all. 2 years after the wedding, I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop in Palo Alto, reviewing acquisition proposals on my laptop. The bell chimed, and I looked up to see Victoria standing in the doorway. She looked different. Designer clothes replaced by off-the-rack business casual, her face showing the wear of 2 years of actual struggle. She approached my table hesitantly. "Hannah, please. 5 minutes." I nodded to the chair across from me, more curious than anything. She sat down, her hands trembling slightly as she placed them on the table. "I'm sorry," she began, and for the first time in our lives, it sounded genuine. "I was horrible to you. I stole from you. I tried to destroy you. There's no excuse." I waited, saying nothing. "I've been going to therapy," she continued, "learning about narcissistic family systems, golden child syndrome. I was raised to believe I deserved everything without earning it. You were raised to believe you deserved nothing despite earning everything." She met my eyes. We were both victims of our parents' dysfunction, just in different ways. "That's probably true," I acknowledged, "but you made choices, adult choices, cruel choices." "I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I did, and that you didn't destroy our family, I did. You just stopped enabling us." I closed my laptop, giving her my full attention. "I appreciate you saying that. And I do forgive you, Victoria. For my own peace, not for your absolution." She stood to leave, then paused. "Could we ever—" "No," I said firmly, but not unkindly. "Forgiveness doesn't mean access. I wish you well, but we're done." She nodded, understanding finally what boundaries really meant, and left. The coffee shop, I should mention, was part of a chain I'd recently acquired. And that's how I transformed from a discarded foster daughter into a CEO of a $5 billion company. This story is 100% true, with names changed for legal protection. If you're facing toxic family abuse, remember, document everything, build your power in silence, and strike when they least expect it. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and comment Phoenix if you're ready to rise from your own ashes.